This series is called Fit Check. It's an interesting trend that we have currently in our culture. One I candidly do not understand and struggle with, not only because I'm old, but secondly, just in general of what it is. I get posting things online, I get taking pictures and showing friends, but the whole idea that I would take a picture of myself and post it online for you to validate and tell me whether it's good or bad absolutely terrifies me. I just never would. I understand I'm so self-conscious, I would never post a picture online and then say, give me your opinion. If I did, that means that I've gotten 10 or 12 other people's opinion before I posted it, whether or not I should post it. I'm not like a clothes horse. I don't like buy tons of new clothes. But if I do purchase something new, before I purchase it, I stand in the store and I take a picture of it and I text Morgan or Bethany to ask them, should I wear this? Should I purchase this? They get a general rule of thumb, to the point that Morgan became so annoyed with it a while back, she just gave me some parameters of what I could purchase and what I couldn't. It was great. Because I'm so terrified of other people's opinion. It just, to me, like, when I say I don't get this thing, I don't get it. It's actually a brutal scenario if you think about it right now. Young adults, that's you, by the way, if you didn't know it. Studies are telling us, and just my experience in working with young adults for as long as I have, you struggle more with anxiety and fear than any other generation before you. So, you struggle with self-worth, anxiety, and fear more than anybody else, and simultaneously, you post pictures and ask people to tell you how you look. Anybody see the conflict here? Tell me what you think of me. Now, over the last few weeks, we've kind of used this Bible verse that we've been talking about a lot, Romans chapter 13, verse 14. Paul said, rather, clothe yourself with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the sinful nature. And the idea behind all of this is, what do we look like to the world? Like, what are you dressed in? Are you dressed in yourself? Are you dressed in the world? Do you look like Jesus? Do you look like something else? Do you fit a mold that the world puts on you or that culture makes you subscribe to? Do you dress yourself in the presence of God, or do you try to impress with the presence of something else? And that, coupled with our need to have people show interest in us, are we clothed in Jesus? What do people think of us? It creates this unique dynamic. So I'm going to be up front tonight. This is less sermon. There's blanks and points, and we may or may not get to all of them. Tonight's a little bit less about what I can teach you and maybe a little more about how I can help you feel about yourself. I don't know if it's always true, but it seems like the need for validation right now is higher than it's ever been. In fact, here's a question I want you to write on the cross at the top of your handout or over on the side. I don't want you to answer it out loud because it'd be too painful for some of you. And the question is, how much do I need validated by others? How much do I need validated by others? That's not a phrase or probably a question you've ever asked yourself, like you're driving down the road and you're like, do I need to be validated by others? I don't think I've ever really even articulated it in such a way until I was thinking about this message and working on it. But don't admit it out loud, but have you ever made a post, waited a little while, and went back to look to see how many likes or follows you have? Or how many comments were made? Why? Part of it is, not all of it, it's not always true, but part of it is we want to be validated. It also it's interesting to me. I have a group of friends that we interact on social media a lot, and one of them will post a concept or idea or talk about something, and they'll ask for feedback, right? Like, tell me what you think. And then like 3 people will say, that's good, that's nice, or I agree. And then someone will say, I disagree, I don't like that. And you know what they make out of that person? They call them a troll and on the attack. But what did they ask for? Feedback. It's like what we're actually asking for. We're not asking for feedback. Sometimes, if we're not careful, what we're asking for is, show me you like me so I can feel good about myself. Validation is important. Acceptance is important. It's necessary. I mean, like, I want to be accepted. I think the opposite is, if all of y'all rejected me, it'd make this a really lonely Wednesday night service. We all want to be wanted. And I'm sure at some point along the way, some of you, or maybe one of you, maybe all of you have thought, why can't I find the friend that I'm looking for? Why can't I find the person to date? Why doesn't anyone ask me out? Why is nobody interested in me? What's wrong with me that no one wants to hang out with me or be around with me? Why do I start a conversation with someone, and then before I know it, they're looking past me and moving on to somebody else? If you ever thought that way, tonight is going to be for you. With all of our ways to connect today, texting, WhatsApp, GroupMe, Signal, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, the thing that started today that I still haven't heard of because I'm an old man and you're on Visco. Just kidding. With all the stuff, with all the ways to connect, it seems there's still an epidemic of loneliness right now. In fact, the more ways to connect, for some of you, makes you feel like you're less connected because no one's connecting with you on all the ways you can connect. You know the feeling that you're all by yourself. You understand all by yourself because a lot of you have been there. Some of you are there right now. It doesn't matter who you are. At some point in your life, you've been affected by loneliness. Now, let me stop and say there's nothing wrong with being alone. I like to be alone a lot of the time. In fact, my personal choice is that I'm alone when I work. It's one of my great strengths and weaknesses as a young adult pastor because you people like to hang out and sit in my office. And I want you around me because it's great. But other times, I just want you to leave. Because I like to be alone. Some of you have come on Wednesday nights. You've shut everything down. It's about 9:30, 9:45 at night, and you go down to my office to put something. Guess what I'm doing? Sit in my office alone. How many of you have seen me doing that? Yep, a bunch of you. Hands in the air. Why? I like to work alone at night. I like to be in there. I like to shut the door. The reason I can do stuff at 10:30 and midnight because I enjoy that. During the day, I've been known to turn the lights off in my whole office, turn off the blinds, and shut all the doors to me, and everyone thinks that I'm gone. But the truth is, I'm back there having the time of my life. Someone will walk in, like Micah will come in the door, like, whatever. He'll open the door and he'll see me and go, oh my God, hi, Pastor Rady, are you okay? That kind of thing. And I'm like, I was until you walked in. I like to be alone. But guess what? Loners can be lonely. In fact, confession time, sometimes I use my I like to be alone as cover for the fact that I'm really lonely and frustrated. A while back, I was working late. It was one of those times, several years ago. Heidi and the girls, they were out of town, which I always hate when my family's gone, but then that's a bonus time because then I can work even later into the night and no one's here. I don't have to put pressure. But for whatever this time, I was missing my family. I was lonely. It was like Friday night. So I called a couple people, called a couple young adults, just said, hey, what's going on? Some friends. I'm like, what are you guys doing for dinner? Everybody was busy. Nobody was available. Then I did what I always do. I offered to pay for meals, thinking they would run, they would come, right? I called 3 different young adults, part of our group, asked them and offered to buy their dinner, and all of them had something to do. Yes, I know, Savannah, I will ask you out from now on. That's weird. I can't do that. Okay. She's like, call me. Please call me. So I decided to walk around the church. I started walking around hoping I'd run into somebody. I was walking around. It was Friday night. It's about 6:30, looking around, find somebody. And then everyone was gone, but I ran into Pastor Gary. Pastor Gary's a friendly guy. He's an old friend. I like, this would be great. I was like, hey, man, what are you doing? He's like, just hanging out, whatever. And I said, so some dumb question, whatever. I worked around like, hey, by the way, Heidi and the girls are out of town. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, He's just smiling at me. I'm dying to hear him say, wow, Randy, you've been such a big influence in my life. I was a young adult before I was a pastor. And because of you and your life's ministry to me, today I'm Pastor Gary. And to say thank you, I'd like to hang out with you tonight and buy your dinner. I was just waiting from him. Cool, well, come on, waiting for him to say. And he said, yeah, I got some plans tonight. And I thought, well, he's going to say, and those plans include you. Never said it. It was awkward at one point. Like, we're just staring at each other. It was like the girl in the cafeteria waiting for the guy to ask her to prom kind of thing. Like, it's coming. I know it's coming. It's not coming. It's coming. It's not coming. It never came. And so I said, well, I'm going to go figure out what I'm going to do. And he said, all right, man, have fun. Have a good night. Pastor Gary. A couple years ago, well, I won't tell that story. No. Savannah, leave me alone. Okay. But you've been there, haven't you? Where you've been lonely, like really lonely. And lonely's okay for a little while. If it's just a Friday night because your friends or family out of town, that's one thing. But when Friday night turns into Saturday and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, and then it comes back again on the next Thursday, and then it's all of a sudden you're in a pattern or a sequence of lonely. Lonely isn't, it's not an experience. It's now loneliness is a lifestyle. And that's horrible, isn't it? It'll affect you physically. It affects you mentally, emotionally, and it even affects you spiritually. It actually affects you in ways you completely don't even realize. What you begin to do stuff to compensate for the loneliness that you don't even realize you're doing it. And if loneliness has become your lifestyle, you might even come to church thinking, hopefully something will change and your lifestyle will be broken. You're here because you're trying to meet people and understand ways to connect with people. But the problem is you can be a loner and lonely, but you can also be in a room full of 100 other people and lonely. In fact, that's probably the most insidious way, isn't it? Is you can be sitting in this room right now, surrounded by all these people who 36 minutes ago you were smiling, laughing, having fun, hanging out with. And a few minutes from now, you're going to pray with some people and you're going to worship and it's going to be awesome. And you're going to go out and get in your car and you're still going to feel lonely. I think Jesus understands loneliness better than we think. See, how could God be lonely? Like he's everywhere at all time, knows everybody. Matthew chapter 26, it's a very familiar story. It's right before Jesus dies. Read it from a different perspective, not in how Jesus is dying to save your sins, but listen as I read this story about how Jesus had to have felt. Then Jesus went with them to the olive garden called Gethsemane and said, sit here while I go over there to pray. Now, give you context. Jesus has just hung out with his best, closest followers, his best friends. He washed their feet. Like ultimate moment of sacrifice. teaches great stuff. He says, hey, hang out with me. I'm going to go pray. And then he took Peter and James and John. He brought the three closest guys to him and said, hey, come on over here. And he became anguished and distressed. And he told them, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and do what? Keep watch with me. This is you at one of the worst, lowest moments of your life, looking at your best friends and saying, hey, come with me and I'm so messed up. Can you just sit with me and make sure I need you. This is not Jesus. This is what you would do. It'd be you saying, I just can't trust myself. I need help. And they're like, absolutely, we're with you, Jesus. He went on a little farther, bowed his head, faced the ground, prayed, my Father, if it's possible. He makes this prayer, your will be done, verse 40. Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. This happens again, verse 43. When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. In the moment when he needed them most, they were there, but not there. Now, if you're struggling with loneliness tonight, part of you is a little hopeful, then I'm going to give you a magic way to get out of this. If you're struggling with loneliness, you're scared to death because you think I'm going to ask you to identify yourself as lonely, and then you're going to feel lonely as you stand up as maybe the only lonely person in the room. We're going to pray, and we're going to pray for you. So I'll let you know right up front, just a few moments. At the same time, while I said a while ago loneliness is not a sin and loneliness is not necessarily a failure, I also don't believe that loneliness has to be your lifestyle. And I don't think, even though, let me say it a different way, I know that there's an epidemic of loneliness, but I also don't think your loneliness has to define your life. And I don't think that all loneliness is the same. And part of our maturity in life is learning when and how to address what we're experiencing. So if you're struggling with loneliness, don't overact. First, if you're lonely tonight, we got to ask a series of questions. First question, is this because of your mistakes? Thanks, Randy. I'm lonely, and now you're saying it's my fault. What a great pastor you are. You lift me up. You're the wind beneath my wings. Thank you, Pastor. But we have to ask that question, because sometimes when you make a bad decision, you alienate yourself from others. So quick example, if you choose not to shower and not to wear deodorant for weeks at a time, you will find yourself lonely. Okay? No one will be your friend, and it's not because they are jerks. It is because they are sensitive to smell. At the same time, if you engage in just as isolating or repulsive behavior, guess what happens when you have repulsive behavior? You repulse people. If you don't go to events, you don't hang out with activities, you don't go to a connect group, you leave as soon as the service is over, you arrive just a few minutes after it starts, if you don't hang out in class with people, if you don't talk to others, guess what there's a high likelihood you will experience? Loneliness. Because you don't have that, but like, Pastor Randy, that's not me. They should come to me. Of course they should. Absolutely. Secondly, maybe not be yours, is this because of others' mistakes? Sometimes you're lonely because of other people. Sometimes they hurt you. Maybe somebody left you. And if they did, I'm really sorry for that. Several of you are about to graduate high school. You're going to go to college. You're going to go far, far, far away. Your parents will be lonely Because of others' mistakes, you went far, far away for college. Which is a reminder, when you go far, far away from college, call your parents and say hello, and don't ask for money, just call and say hello. Okay? Sometimes people just make mistakes. Several years ago, I lost my good friend. Like in a matter of days, I went from my friend who we hung out together, our families hung out together, we talked all the time. He and I would meet for lunch. We spent hours of time. If you said, Randy, who is your best friend? I would have said this guy. And then in 5 days, because of choices he made, he completely vanished from my life. I did nothing wrong. It was horrible. I miss my friend to this day. Is it because of your mistakes? Is it because of others' mistakes? Third, is this just temporary? Sometimes loneliness is temporary. You're alone for a period of time. Don't overreact to just for a couple days you're going to be by yourself. When I was home alone and the girls were gone and Pastor Gary was treating me horribly, that was just a piece. Sometimes you're going to move to a new place. You're going to go away to college. It's going to be lonely. Because if you move to a new place, you can't expect 18 years of friendship and relationships at the new place. It's going to take time to build those relationships. It's just temporary. There are times you're lonely. When I travel, I'll sit at an airport. I'll be at a hotel. I know that will end. I just have to get through the temporary. Maybe the best question is, you should ask yourself, am I missing something? Not like you're missing people, but this question is different. Are you missing the things and the people that are right in front of you? Are you missing a chance to connect and build a relationship with someone who is there, but you're not engaging it? So here's a question. Who's around you that could be your friend? Maybe you don't have to be as lonely as you are if you will choose to engage the people around you. Now, listen carefully because you could misunderstand and misapply what I'm about to say. When you are young, when you're a little kid, most of your relationships are people related to you or people who are in close proximity to you. So when you are 3 years old, you're not meeting friends on the internet. If you are, we need to talk. Mr. Tyler was going to have an intervention. You are making friends with people who you go to preschool with. When you're in elementary school, most likely your closest friends are people you play ball with, people you go to class with, or sit around you. As you get older, your proximity friends become less and less important because now you can connect in different ways. You can begin friendships, relationships, long distance. You begin to expand. As you are going through this season, the older you get, the more varied and the more specific we become in who the friends we have. Classic college young adult pastor. You're in 11th and 12th grade and you've got a subset of friends and they all look and act and do these kinds of things. They like these restaurants, they go this thing, this is who we hang out with. Then you go to college in another state. And guess what? All this group of friends, none of them went to this school. And you always hung out every Thursday night and you ate canes together. And now you've gone to another school and they don't even have canes. It's like Canada or Russia. It's some horrible place like that, right? It doesn't have canes, okay? These communists, they don't have it, right? So guess what you're going to have to do in this setting? You're going to have to find a new set of friends, and you're going to have to find new experiences because you can't just recreate what you had. And so you can't look for the exact same profile of the same people that you hung out with. Now, I'm not saying lower your standards. I'm not talking about compromising your integrity. In fact, the same thing happens when you become a follower of Jesus Christ. Some of you had a whole group of friends, relationships when you weren't serving the Lord. and they did all kinds of bad things. Like, y'all had a blast sinning. Like, this was fun. I understand people say sin isn't fun. Sin's a blast. That's why people do it. But it isn't healthy, and it doesn't help you move forward. So you're in this world, and you're experiencing it, and God transforms and changes you, and he moves you into his glorious light, puts you in a relationship, and guess what? Your friends over here don't do the things that are over there. They don't look like that, and they don't act like that. And suddenly you can, if you are looking for those experiences in the kingdom of God, guess what you won't find? Those experiences. And so your approach has to shift. You're not changing your standards, but what you are saying is, I am going to bloom and work in the new setting that I'm in. Are you missing something? So, great, Randy, I figured it out. This is what's at. What do I do? How do I solve this? Let me give you some suggestions if you're struggling with loneliness tonight. First, change your environment. Don't do what I do and go and lock yourself in a room by yourself. Get out of the house. Change the environment around you. When you know you are struggling with loneliness, change your physical world. Like, if you have the ability, paint the walls in your house bright colors. Don't wear blacks and grays all the time. You're like, but I don't like bright colors. I thought you didn't like being lonely. Change your environment. It has nothing to do with the dark colors. That's not it at all. But when you are in depression, when you are down, then you need to change to bring brightness in your life. So, stop eating bad, unhealthy food. Quit eating chicken strips for 5 meals a day. Okay? Everybody write this down. I want you to put it on the side. Write these 2 words, all caps, bold, underline, and put a star by it. Eat salad. In the name of Jesus. Without 1.5 gallons of ranch poured on top of it. Do not put bacon, fried chicken, ranch, cornbread, and a third of lard. Just eat lettuce. Eat salad in the name of Jesus. Go for a walk. Get outside. Do stuff. If you're lonely, get outside and do stuff. Sometimes your job creates loneliness for you because you work by yourself, you're isolated, or you're married to someone who, because of their work, takes them away for long periods of time. This is Heidi and I's scenario. I go and I travel. I'm gone. I'll be gone for 10, 12 days internationally. So she has to figure stuff out to not be lonely during those seasons. You're going to have to do the same thing. Don't spend yourself into debt. Do the math on the budget. Evaluate your money. And if you're really struggling in your space and you can do it, change jobs. Go be a greeter at Walmart. Bright lights, really nice old people. You'll be great. Change your emotional environment. Quit listening to depressing music. When you're lonely, stop listening to country music. Come on. I don't understand it. That's what I used to do. It's like, well, I'm lonely, I'm missing. I find myself, I'm like, these songs are depressing and discouraging. They're resonating with my moment, and I don't want them to resonate with my moment. I want to break out of this moment. If you're going through a breakup song, burn down Taylor Swift music. We don't need that. Okay? She's got her place, but not when you're going through a breakup. It's just contributing to the overall thing. Come on now. I'm not sure her place. Never mind. Let's keep going. Stop watching depressing movies and TV shows. There's some stuff that is great in entertainment that is damaging to your soul. If you're struggling with depression and fear and anxiety and worry, stop watching procedural cop dramas where people die and get assaulted. You're like, well, it's just entertainment and TV. No, it's feeding how you feel. Watch award shows where glitter falls from the sky and they sing and cheer it. It's all fake. It's awesome. Right? Number 2, it's time to end your destructive relationships. Like, wait a minute, I'm lonely. So how do I have destructive relationships? Believe it or not, lonely people attract other lonely people. And they're all lonely together. And you'd think, wait a minute, you put 3 lonely people in the room, guess what? They're all unlonely. What is the right word there? They're all not lonely. But you know what they are? They don't take away the loneliness. They actually exponentially increase the loneliness because they feed on each other. Some of you are in a relationship with a person that is the source of your loneliness. They use you and they manipulate you through romantic interactions to get what they want, but they don't struggle with your separated. So they use you to feel good about themselves or have a great time for a few moments, but then they leave and you sit in your dorm room or your apartment and you are desperately lonely because you wish you were back with them, but you don't understand what's happening. They are manipulating your emotions. Those people are destructive to you. The boyfriend who promises he'll be with you forever and forever doesn't last till like 11:30 tonight. But give him time, because you know what he's going to do? He's going to contact you in 5 or 6 days. Maybe hours. He's using you for his own pleasure and convincing you that he is committed to you, and then when he acts uncommitted to you, you feel lonely. Listen to me. You have more value and worth than that. Don't let someone manipulate you consistently by promising you forever, but only giving you an hour and a half of their time. End your destructive relationships. The next one, restore some healthy ones. Put some stuff back, build some new ones. I use the word restore because some of you may have ended some healthy relationships just by accident, but it's time to make them right. Maybe you screwed up, did something wrong. Go back in time, fix them. Some of you, if you grew up at First Assembly, some of you have got some class pastors that you were really close to years ago, and just life has moved on since then. You know what you can do? Those friends would love to reconnect with you. Restore those relationships. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm lonely. Earlier tonight, someone, when they knew what we were talking about, came up to me and said, Pastor Randy, this is really for me. I'm really lonely. Sometimes just saying it pops the bubble and just releases some of the stress. Number 4, do something for other people. Get involved in ministry. This is not a trick to make you do stuff. This is a pathway to help you overcome your loneliness. And when you are standing at the back, checking people in, or you're before service and worship, when you are at Seek and Save, walking around, praying for people, when you are unpacking groceries from the Convoy of Hope truck, when you're doing attendance in young professionals class, when you're doing all that stuff, don't just do the task, engage the people. Talk to others. Take this step. Do something for other people. Feeling lonely doesn't make you a failure. Let me say it again. Feeling lonely doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're flawed. It doesn't mean you're broken. Being lonely is not a character flaw. Lots of us deal with loneliness. in 2 Timothy chapter 4, we read about a guy named Paul, maybe the most famous follower of Jesus other than Peter, probably the most important one in the early church. The greatest heroes of the church planter, amazing guy, he was lonely. In 2 Timothy is his last book he ever writes. It's the last written words we ever have from him. Chapter 4, Paul's last words are the words of not like this victorious super Christian, but a fairly lonely, you might even argue, depressed guy. Listen to what he says in chapter 4, verse 6. For I'm already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Like, well, that's pretty powerful until you remember that Paul writes this when he's in prison, and he expects to be killed in the next few days. And he says, I'm in jail, and it's done. The Message Bible says it this way: you take over. Talking to Timothy, it's time for you to take over. I'm about to die. My life an offering on God's altar. This is the only race worth running. I've run hard to the finish, and I believed all the way. He says, I'm pretty much done. And here I'm in jail. Do you remember when you were on the playground as a kid and you split up into teams, how horrible, don't admit if you're ever the last one, because that's going to be embarrassing. But the terror of being picked last often ate me up. It's lonely when you go through a painful experience and no one understands. It's lonely when you're misunderstood and embarrassed. It's not just being by yourself. Loneliness comes when other things start happening to you. Paul was lonely because he was put in jail. It's lonely when people criticize you or attack you. You feel lonely when they tear stuff apart. In verse 16 of 2 Timothy chapter 4, maybe one of the saddest verses in the entire Bible, Paul, who's led thousands of people to Christ, planted dozens of churches, and at this point has written the books of the Bible that include 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Ephesians, Galatians, Romans, Colossians. He has written the Bible. When he's arrested and goes to jail, he writes, at my first defense, at court, no one came to support me. Everyone deserted me. I have to think at some point down the road that if I got arrested for being a pastor, maybe one of you would show up. And if none of you, I've been a young adult pastor for 20 years, somebody would show up. I would hope one person would. But no one showed up for Paul. And now he's about to die. Jesus is abandoned in the garden. Paul is in prison and left by everybody else. Don't tell me loneliness can't happen to anybody. What do you do when you're lonely? Some of you work really hard. You become exhausted. Some of you, when you're lonely, you buy stuff. You don't have to admit who you are. I eat when I'm lonely. There. Like piles of food. That's what I do. Some of you buy clothes, you buy stuff. Pastor Rod calls it retail therapy. Some people, they medicate their loneliness. So they drink, they take drugs. They use pornography, not for sexual pleasure, but to change the feeling. Some people do anything they can to have somebody in their life, so they have sex with anybody. Because anything they can do not to feel lonely, and then they feel guilty about that. Some people do nothing. They just sit around and mope. And then they post about it online. Some people just are paralyzed. Remember what Paul said. I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, I've kept the faith. Now there's in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but to all who have longed for his appearing. And then later, Paul said this, after talking about being deserted, he said, but the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength. Everybody left but one person. And I sound like a pastor when I say, Jesus will stand with you. Right? But it's true. There is no place God isn't. When you are lonely, recognize God's presence around you. Which means, even in your loneliest moment, God is there. The key word there is recognize. See what's already there. The Lord stood at my side and gave me strength. Why? Paul says, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed and all the Gentiles might hear. Paul says, I got strong. Jesus appeared to me so that I could tell Gentiles about Jesus, which is interesting because if you've studied anything of the New Testament, what does Paul consider his main task and assignment in life? To preach Jesus to the Gentiles, which means that Paul got right back to doing what was his main mission and assignment. Loneliness didn't stop Paul from doing what he was supposed to be doing. So number 5, when you are lonely, keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. See, this is the trick. This is the trap. This is what the devil does. Is you feel lonely and depressed and discouraged. You're like, I can't walk into a room of 115 people and sit here. I'm just going to be my loneliness is going to be more reinforced. But I'm going to tell you, you need to keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. Don't let loneliness knock you off the track of what you should be doing. Get back to doing what you're supposed to be doing. And finally, maybe the most important principle of them all. Paul said, the Lord stood at my side. Remember, followers of Jesus are never alone. Matthew 28:20, some of Jesus' very last words. Teach the new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you. That's you, by the way. You're the new disciples. And be sure of this. Say this sentence with me. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. See, Randy, will Jesus be my best friend? Probably not the way we mean that. But Jesus will not leave you, abandon you, or forsake you. And with all seriousness, a few of you are going to leave in the next few months and go away to a new place. You're going to start a new school. You're going to be in a different state. Some of you are going to start a new job. You're about to graduate college. You're going to be in a new environment. Some of you are having to move. At some point in your life, you're going to have to move to another city, another state. And loneliness is going to be the reality. Listen to me. I'm not trying to discourage you. You will be lonely. But loneliness does not have to define you. Because you aren't really alone. Get back to what you're supposed to be doing. Change your environment. In those destructive relationships, start doing new relationships with the right kinds of people, and the Lord will be with you.